El juego parte de la colectividad y algo vital para conocer y comprender nuestro mundo. Sin juego no hay nada.
Bueno, pues la celebración sigue y pues nuestra siguiente speaker, ¿qué les puedo decir? Tiene una amplia experiencia y ha trabajado muy fuerte por consolidar la educación creativa, la cultura y el juego como un derecho de todos los niños. Desde el 2018, ella ha sido una extraordinaria directora de aprendizaje, programas nacionales del John V&A en el Museo Victorian and Albert de Londres. Dr. Helen Charman.
Woo! Yeah. Oh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, amazing. I had no idea how I was just introduced because I don't yet speak Spanish, but I'm so going to learn Spanish. Hola. Hola, everybody. What a joy to be here. Everyone just stand up and wiggle around. Come on, you've been sitting still. Just give yourselves a wiggle. Yeah, whew. Come on, 10 more minutes to go. Okay, and okay, you can sit down again now. Don't forget to play. Okay, I've got my notes on my hand. So first of all, just a huge thank you to What Design Can Do, all of What Design Can Do, and What Design Can Do Mexico. It's so exciting to be here. Even the little earthquake alarm yesterday was quite exciting and also a little bit terrifying. So, play as an act of collective rebellion. So let's just start by thinking about what does it mean to rebel? It means breaking some rules, doing things differently, taking no notice of authority. I was a little bit of a rebel at school. Actually, I wasn't. I was just playful. But the school didn't quite give me that space to be playful, so I had to go to a different school where I could play. Brilliant. So rebelling. What did we rebel against when we were creating Young V&A? Young V&A is a museum that just opened a year ago, so we're 1 year old, in London's East End, and we've had an amazing first year. But we had to break some of the traditions, the rules, the control settings of what a museum is. So some of the rules that we had to break, and we had a lot of fun doing that, were, let's see, who are museums for? Generally, museums are created for people who are able-bodied, fully sighted, and tall, grown-ups. That is discriminatory. That is discriminatory. If you are a child, if you're a small person, if you are using a wheelchair, you can't see the works. Unless you can levitate, but as far as I know, children can't levitate. So discriminatory, made for grown-ups. Museums are places where you learn by looking, largely. We know that's not true. Looking is one mode of learning about the world, but we are embodied, we learn through doing. So museums actually discriminate against modes of engagement with the world. Museums also are places where the behaviours are, you're meant to be kind of quiet, no running, no skipping, no breakdancing. We have breakdancing in our museum. You can do a little bit of daydreaming. No places to be loud or small and quiet and reflective. No hula hooping. We have hula hooping in our museum. Basically, don't be a full human being in a museum. So we broke that when we were creating Young V&A. How did we do that? Not because we knew what we were doing. We didn't. The grown-ups didn't. We had to work with the children. Young V&A is a co-design museum. So from the outset, we worked with children from the earliest years to early teens. So we are designing with and not for. So we've got to step back. We don't have all the answers. Let's be humble and let's co-design. And later on, I'll be introducing Jill, who very helped me up the stairs. Jill, who's Director of Agents of Change, one of our fantastic design and the lead architecture company who helped us work in a co-design methodology, working with, stepping away from established modes of authority to put the child at the center. Not the object, but the child. and understanding how children learn. We had to do a mashup of child-centered developmental science of early years and bring that into the methods and knowledges of museum making. It was really exciting, and we learned a lot. Okay, give me one word for this child. What's she feeling? Just shout out. Yes, joy. Absolutely. The brief the children gave us was to create the world's most joyful museum. Now, we'd done some research before. We asked a large cohort of 8 to 12-year-olds what they thought when we said the word museum to them. What word popped into their head? What do you think that word was? Boring, exactly. That's nearly 1 in 2 kids are saying museums are boring. So we've got to break that. We've got to throw that out. So yes, joy, don't forget to play. And of course, designing is playing, becoming fully human is playing. So yeah, this was a recent origami workshop we did at the museum. Okay, I'm pressing the red button to move on. The red one? Yeah. Oh, the big green one. See, this is why I had to change schools. I can't follow the rules. Okay, so Young V&A really built about the idea of creative confidence, making connections, bringing your ideas to life, affecting change, being a tool for change. And also this method of co-working, working with and not for. I don't see the point of any design that doesn't take a co-working approach. I don't get it. The days are gone. So our vision here, inspiring children to be these kind of creative dynamos, empowering educators with their own creative confidence, putting creative thinking, critical thinking, collaboration, empathy, all these core skills at the heart of education, connecting young people with each other, with their siblings, with creative people, the museum as a place of convening and collection, and influencing the broader conversation about what museums are, who they're for, having these incredible opportunities to contribute to an international conversation about changing museums. Young V&A is an anchor organisation. We're in London's East End. You can't really pick us up and put us anywhere else because we're so embedded in our community. But we also have national reach. We are a very powerful advocate for shifts in our national education system, bringing creativity back to the fore, and also an advocate internationally. And we're recently part of a big UNESCO framework for art and culture. So the conversation is global. Obviously it is. We're all in the room today having this international conversation. Okay, won't go into this, but just to say this process of co-design is rigorous. You know, I have a doctorate in education, which I did while I was having babies and moving jobs and moving countries. Why did I do that? Because I knew that we needed to have scholarship and rigor and authority to underpin this change in practice. Who holds the knowledge? Who has the authority? Who speaks with the children? Who centres the child's experience in the world of culture? So a lot of consultation, a lot of learning, working with our local communities, working with local government, being part of the policy conversations, and really trying to advocate for the child. We also was just thinking about the idea of the multi-form. We broke the notion of teams and silos. You know, here's the collections team, here's the design team, and here's learning. Here are the hierarchies, here are the silos. No. So we broke that apart and we mixed up our teams. We had an integrated approach from the outset, but the child again in the centre. Doesn't seem that radical, but when you work in museums, the orthodoxy is that the collection, the object, the material culture sits at the heart. It doesn't. The collections are there to work on behalf of the human, of the child. You've got to work hard for the child. Okay, so 3 galleries, play, imagine and design. Very quickly, a little bit of an adventure into childhood development. So, top left, Johann Pestalozzi lived in the 18th century into the 19th century. Really was the founder of a lot of what we understand about object-based learning. Pestalozzi was all for inclusive education, going against the grain. He was a real progressive. He believed that everyone merited an education. If you were poor or, you know, shock horror, if you were a girl, you still should have the opportunity to be educated. But he also believed in active learning and object-based learning. Pestalozzi influenced Friedrich Froebel, the German pedagogue who established the kindergarten. And one of the tenets of early learning, and we're so familiar now with the notion of play-based learning, but Froebel, early 19th century, believed in, again, active learning. Play is at the absolute core of learning, and also the benefits of play for its own sake, and also the role of women. And look, we just had up on the stage all these incredible women. Actually, men need to get more involved in early childhood education, please. I think it would make a big change to what we're seeing, conflicts around the world. But actually, Froebel did a lot for really establishing early learning through play. There was a kind of Prussian Revolution, all the progressive thinkers had to scatter. There was a kindergarten diaspora internationally in the 19th century. All these ideas of early childhood learning went across the world, came to North and Central America. So in our mini museum, then you've got Maria Montessori, ideas about follow the child, let the child learn independently, observe the child at play. Working with Jill with AOC, our museum is full of seats. I've worked in museums where new directors have come along and they've excised all the seating from the galleries as if we're just kind of eyes and brains. No, our museum is full of seating. Sit and observe your child at play and have a rest. So the ideas of these really inspiring early years pedagogues inform the museum. This is our mini museum for under twos. We broke a lot of rules making this museum. Objects displayed at child height, sensory engagement, the antique mirrors in the mirrored case, the beautiful colour totems. Imagine the fun our curators had going into the stores to find, objects that are red, objects that are green, objects that are yellow. It sounds reductive, it isn't. They're working from the child's perspective. The objects work for the child. They're set in sensory environments, so the child can then engage experientially while also looking at, and there's so much chat that happens in this space. I've seen children take their first steps in the mini museum, developing play skills for parents through different kind of co-working games. Again, this is just interesting, some of the objects. We have the alphabet with Makaton signage, because obviously we've got pre-literate kids, about sounding out the octopus. It's there because you make the sound off for octopus. The red or dead bag, it's in a space which is about learning through opposites, rough and smooth. It's set in a bumpy wooden environment. The David Hockney, with all respect to David Hockney, that work is not on display because it's by David Hockney. It's on display in our sound area in the mini museum because it helps you think about rain and the sound of a splash when we do our movement and sound activities. The Imagine Gallery, all about the power of storytelling. The imaginary world, again, philosophically, children, particularly around ages sort of 3 to 7, they're developing what we call theory of mind. I have a mind, I have thoughts, you do too. Empathy, it's called paracosms, imaginary worlds. Stepping into the world of somebody else, compassion, empathy, all of these core qualities catalyzed through activities that can take you on a storytelling journey. The whole museum is mapped to a rubric of skills through creative confidence. So we can be very academic about it if we need to, but it's about playful learning and the child at the center. We have a fantastic collection of dolls' houses at the V&A. But if you just display them in glass vitrines, it's not meaningful, it's not relevant, it's not inspiring to the child. All the themes of the galleries were created through the conversations with the children. So when we were thinking about the dolls' houses, the kids were saying, well, this is about how we live, how we're part of a community, how I have a stake in where I live. Do I live near the park? Do I feel safe? Where does my best friend live? How much traffic is there? Can I play out in the streets? Is it my space? So we displayed the dolls' houses with a playable dolls' house in a street scene. And just those little changes then make the experiences relevant. We worked with local children and architect to develop an exhibit for this gallery, which was the children talking about their experiences of living in the locality. The design gallery, Jill will talk more about this. The kids wanted they wanted a flying car in the museum. So we do have a suspended car, but it's part of a case study on micromobility, how we move around cities. This city, with all respect, I think could rethink transport infrastructure. How do we change behaviours And so we're working with children through the lens of design. Other things the kids wanted, they wanted a live tiger as a mascot, which we couldn't give them. But we've got lots of animals on display. They wanted fire, they wanted colour, they wanted pattern, they wanted joy, they wanted space. They've been involved in curating objects around the museums, giving them the skills and the confidence to display. We have a fantastic shed in the design gallery where every 6 months there's a designer in residence. This is Clara Chu. So the kids can come along, they can bring their own work, they can engage with the designer, they can be inside a studio, we can demystify what being a designer means. We do a lot of work where we design the museum inclusively. We worked with designers who were neurodiverse or differently abled. Start at what used to be called the margins, and then you are inclusive. This is from one of our sessions for children with autism. This was the feedback. Today I saw a perfect place, just perfect. Well, that's fantastic. That's meeting the brief. These are some of our tactile books that we use as resources. Nearly finished, 2 more slides. Okay, so it was a massive experiment, Young V&A. We couldn't find a blueprint. There are loads of fantastic science centres, STEM-based museums for children, but very few that have world-class collections of art, design, performance. Because it's harder, you can't directly engage, but you have to create an environment where the children can have that sensory engagement. So we didn't know when we opened how this was going to land. There weren't really any other spaces like this. And this was the critical reception, and it just blew our minds. It was so humbling and so inspiring. Like going on a play date at the nation's grandest house. Play at the centre. Blowing the cobwebs away. Shaping up for a new generation, a new type of museum, for a new generation. Young V&A, the first look at last. London has a museum that is truly for kids instead of just about them. We need every city to have its own version of a Young V&A. Okay, and that's our own joy. This was an award that we recently won. I'm saying with all humility, it's actually the largest museum award in the world, recognised for child-centred co-working methodology. Breaking the rules, doing things differently in ways that matter. And this last closing shot, which Jill will talk more about, is the big central atrium of the museum, and we deliberately left a lot of space. We're in the area in London and in England and in the United Kingdom that has the poorest children in the country. Many of them live in multi-generational households. They don't have a blade of grass, they don't have a balcony, they don't have a garden, but they can come to Young V&A, it's free, and they can do what they like in this central space. And they do. They arrive on their little micro scooters, they come whizzing in. I've literally seen kids arrive and kind of break dance over the threshold. There's a big welcome. It is a joyful space. And I hope at some point in the future to welcome many delegates today to Young V&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Well, I just want to share a quick question with you. I mean, as just already Cass mentioned, obviously adults, we need to go to the, like a psychiatric psychology helps based on our current education. But after hearing you, I am curious about how children reinterpret the museum's collection, you know, with their spontaneous way. What can we learn from that perspective?
Yes, but I suppose the kids don't know that there's a museum collection. They're just interested in it for its own sake. So they're really curious. It's designed to inspire that curiosity, to ask the questions. There is lots of looking and conversation and then interactives which will mimic the sorts of engagement that you'll have with a collection. So for example, in the play gallery, we had to double this, it was so popular. We have a sand pattern table, and the exhibits around it are all about what we would call fine motor skills, gross motor skills. The child doesn't need to know that. What they need to know is that here is a space where they are invited to make marks, to make patterns, to collaborate. We've got a giant marble run, which is all about, and you kind of pull off the different bits and put the balls down, and the kids have to do this together. You can't do it by yourself. So the design, Reggio Emilia principles, the environment is the third teacher. So you create the environment, the conditions for play. And the children know what to do. The children absolutely know what to do.
For sure. So thank you very much. Un fuerte aplauso para Helen. Gracias.
Felicidades.
Sí.